as we already made some introduction, I will directly pass the micro to Dr. Joanna Sanetra-Szeliga and the topic of ILUCIDARE. Joanna, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Well, I had a lot of screen time today, so I'm not going to bore you with myself much. But anyway, for those who just tuned in, I would like to welcome you to this session on heritage and innovation. It is our pleasure to share with you the findings of ILUCIDARE project. But before we start with some serious issues, I would like to propose, just for the diversity of your watching the conference also, I would like to propose that you take part in a short poll that we prepared as a way to warm up before the discussion today. And I would like to invite Jimena Quijano, who is a research associate at the University of Leuven for ILUCIDARE project, to start us off with some questions and the poll. Jimena, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joanna, and good morning, everyone. Indeed, we would like to make some questions for you to all participate, and we get to know who is joining us today. I will share the link in the chat. And please, everyone can click the link, or if you want to join a different device, for example, your phone, you can go to www.menti.com and use the code. I will just need to know if the message on the chat was received. Joanna, I don't know if you can see the chat, maybe.
No, I'm sorry, I can't see it on the chat. Could you please paste it again? I'm sorry for the technical problems that we might be having.
I paste it again. No.
Jimena, please make sure that you use this general chat, not the internal chat.
I seem to only have one.
Well, okay, so yeah, well, we are having some technical difficulties, maybe just for a moment. So, in time we make up for those. I would like. We will get back to the poll in a second, but maybe we will start with introducing the other people. Oh, there it is. Okay, I encourage you all who are watching us to go to the Mentimeter and answer the questions. Thank you very much, and sorry for this little mishap here. Yeah, so if it works, we would like to see the results.
The live results.
Yeah, the live results, if it's possible. Oh, there we go.
Perfect. So we can see a lot of people from Budapest, Bucharest, Istanbul, Warsaw, Skopje, Krakow, Leuven.
Yeah, it seems that most people come from Budapest because it's the biggest here.
Yeah, indeed, it's the biggest. So most people come from there. So far we have 10 responses. We can give a couple of seconds more to see more participants.
Or we can move to another question just to keep it going.
Indeed, we can go to the next question. Yeah, if we can show in the screen the next question.
Yeah, we are waiting for the link to upload. There it is. And in a minute, you'll see it on the chat as well.
Is the same link? The page will update.
Yep. Yeah, it's the same link. You can just click the next page. So if you want to do it, please do.
And maybe also for the presentation of the live results, it's also the same link. Because this could be the other link, I think.
Okay. Yeah, see, it's that's when you try to do too much technology. Well, let's stick with it for a moment. The link, you just have to click next question. There is a little arrow there, and you go to the next question.
We can maybe show the results after. In the meantime, people
yes, maybe that would be best. Not to linger on that. Thank you, Jimena.
Thank you, Joanna.
Well, at least we know that there are people on the other side of the screen, so it's really good, because it's kind of weird when you talk to the camera and you have no idea who is on the other side. So thank you for everybody who answered the questions. So we are sure we are not talking in vain. And well, I hope that what I said about ILUCIDARE before at least sprung a little bit of your curiosity, and you would like to learn more about our project. Our chat moderator is ready there for you to have your questions, your comments, anything you would like to say to us during the session, so that in the end we can bring up some issues to the floor. So please feel free to use the chat and to interact with us as much as you want to. Well, the question for our session is what innovation can bring to heritage, and how heritage can inspire innovation. Usually our thinking about the past is mostly shaped by the idea that those two, heritage and innovation, are quite opposite. They are maybe not enemies, but something excluding each other. However, as our project ILUCIDARE proves, they are increasingly becoming recognized as powerful allies that are capable of jointly contributing to social and political change, economic development, both in Europe and beyond. And what we want to discuss today are examples of heritage-led innovation project, and investigate the relations between those two areas, the innovation and heritage. And our goal here is to present our findings, obviously, and the outputs that we are going to have for you in the end of our project in April next year, but also inspire further research on heritage-led innovation. We think that there is still a research gap in that area, and we think it's important to explore it a little bit more. And before we go deeper into this topic, let me share with you some facts about the ILUCIDARE project itself. I know there are some of you that have listened to me before 10 o'clock, but for those who just joined us, I would like to say that this ILUCIDARE project is an international research project conducted by an international consortium that includes partners of various backgrounds, which I think it's a great strength for our project. KU Leuven is the project leader, and then we have Europa Nostra, KEA, IMEC, World Monuments Fund in Spain, Cultural Heritage Without Borders Kosovo, and University of Cuenca in Ecuador. And the research part that we are going to present, and that was the backbone of the project, was done mostly by KU Leuven and the ICC. This project has received funding from the European Union's Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program. You could say that there are two areas of interest in the project: heritage-led innovation and heritage-led international relations. And as I said before, we will be focusing only on the first strand of the project today. ILUCIDARE has the ambition to establish an international network of people promoting heritage as a resource for innovation and international cooperation through a diversity of collaborative actions that we've done during the project. And I hope that you can go to our page, you can see what we are up to, what we are still planning, and that you can join our network of people who think that heritage can also have meaning for innovation. Project activities include the research part that has already been done, because the project started back in 2018. And we are going to discuss it a little bit more in detail in a moment. And there are also participatory and co-creative activities, capacity building workshops, which are mostly done outside of Europe, not only in the Balkans, but also in Africa, Middle East, South America. There are networking activities and the competitions. As I mentioned before, we have ILUCIDARE special prize winner with us today, which I'm very happy about it, and I'm going to introduce her in a while. But before I do that, I would like to dive in a little bit in the topic of our research in ILUCIDARE and invite our coordinator, the scientific coordinator of our project, Dr. Aziliz Vandesande. She has a master's degree in conservation of monuments and sites and a PhD title related to her work on preventive conservation of built heritage. We know her very well from Cultural Heritage Counts for Europe that we've done we did together a couple of years ago. She's a member of the UNESCO Chair on Preventive Conservation, Maintenance and Monitoring of Monuments and Sites in Kyiv, Leuven, and an author and editor of a number of various publications. So Aziliz, please tell us more about the outputs of our joint research.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for this great introduction. I will gladly share with everyone who is here today a little bit about, as Joanna already said, the research that we have been conducting in our project called ILUCIDARE. So first things first, here you see our wonderful, let's say, banner. We are a very colorful and, let's say, a very youthful as well, if I can add, project. So Joanna said we have a very diverse team of partners, but what I also like is that we are all young creative thinkers. So the slogan of our project is basically building international connections for heritage-led innovation. So here you can see already the two strands of our actual project. Then the title of today, what can innovation bring to heritage and how can heritage inspire innovation? I think just for all of you who are tuning in, I think it's interesting to know that what we will be presenting today is basically part of our innovation handbook. So we are actually making the first ever innovation handbook for heritage here at KU Leuven, and we are very, very happy and proud to launch this handbook on 19th of July during the very first ILUCIDARE summer school, which will take place in Krakow and which is organized, of course, by the team of Joanna at the ICC. So again, here, Joanna already introduced our wonderful team of partners, so I will not go in depth, just to say we are really worldwide, and I think we have very, very strong and cool partners, also a bit out of the ordinary partners like IMEC in the bottom, an R&D company who are not experts in heritage, but who have really been helping us in understanding innovation. Now, let's cut to the chase. So what is this heritage-led innovation? Or in other words, does heritage actually have anything to do with innovation? The first thing that we did in the project was basically trying to understand for ourselves what is innovation or what is heritage-led innovation. So for this, we started off with applying the method of grounded theory. So basically looking in a large number of existing innovation definitions and studies, and then finding recurring patterns or core topics. And here you can see the output of that. So for us as a team in ILUCIDARE, when we talk about heritage-led innovation, for us, the four main components are that there should be new knowledge at the basis of the project or of the innovation. Usually these new ideas, they come from working interdisciplinary, which is, I think, something very at the core of the heritage sector. Another point is that the goal of this innovation should be value creation or preservation. So whatever you're doing in the project or an innovator is doing should improve the current situation. Another very important point for us is it should not just remain an idea, because you can have cool ideas, whatnot. No, it should actually be implemented or at least tested practically before it can become an innovation. And then finally, this is also core in the definition, is that it's the market and society who determine the success of the innovation. Moving on to the next slide. So that was our overall definition, let's say. But when looking into what is happening in the heritage sector for projects or activities who align with this definition, we quite quickly saw that there are three main categories or groups of this kind of heritage-led innovations. We just quickly, for your information, want to show what they are. So the first one is heritage-driven innovation. These are innovations that come from within the heritage sector and are meant for the heritage sector. These mainly relate to, let's say, treatment of biological deterioration of specific building materials, like here you see an example of marble. The second one is assimilation of innovations. There's a lot of projects and activities who basically use existing technology and apply them to the heritage sector to make heritage management or whatever go more efficient or better. This can go from drones to laser scanning, or the example that you see here, automatic image recognition applied to the field of archaeology. And then the final one is what we call heritage as a resource. This is basically drawing on the very core values of heritage to try to create something new, creative, entrepreneurial, industrious. This is very closely linked to cultural creative industries in most of the cases. And the example that you see here is the one that Joanna already mentioned before. It is the very first ILUCIDARE special prize winner in the category of innovation. And it's a cultural creative industry linked to traditional paper making. Then moving on. So as soon as we knew, like, okay, we know what heritage-led innovation is all about, we grasped the concept, we started looking into, are these things actually happening in Europe today? So we started mapping a whole range of, let's say, project activities, innovation that matched the criteria of our definition. In the end, we ended up with about 131 examples of heritage-led innovation in Europe. And we just quickly want to show a bit of statistics to give you an idea what's happening out there. And I think it will also be great for the discussion. So what we can see is, like, who are the people today starting this type of innovation projects? They are still mainly, let's say, the research and education sector. So everything from universities to schools. So that is understandable. And then when we look at, let's say, the innovation succeeds and it is continued on the long term, it's mainly business. It's more businesses and civil society who take on the role of, let's say, managing it long term. This is very nice, but in the future, we would like to see more businesses involved and civil society involved from the very start of such innovation projects. Also interesting to know is, like, where do these things actually happen mostly? I think it's not a surprise that they mainly happen in cities who are like creative hubs, and like a lot of stuff is coming together there. So cities are definitely a big factor. Again, we hope in the future to see also more innovations happening in smaller places, rural areas. There is, of course, some examples of them, of course, which are very, very awesome, but it would be great to see more of them in the future. Another big category that you can see is the cross-border collaboration. These are mainly, let's say, EU-funded projects where different countries collaborate to really implement specific ideas. Then next up, and I think this is definitely important for the conversation, we also checked, so again, we are talking about 131 examples of heritage-led innovation in the EU. We checked where in the PESTEL categories they actually belong. So our biggest fear was that we would mainly find technical innovations, and there is a lot of them. It's definitely not a bad thing. So the main examples that you will find here are probably what we call the assimilation of innovations. So again, existing technologies which are being molded and applied in the heritage sector. But we were happy to see that there is also a lot of social innovations going on. So this was for us already a very big comfort. What we would like to see more in the future is definitely, you can see there on the right-hand side, ecological innovations. There is so much potential to link the heritage sector to biodiversity or ecological innovations, as well as the other ones that are lacking. And then on the very right-hand side of the slide, you see we were kind of checking, are these innovations always, let's say, entered on one of the PESTEL categories or more of them? And unfortunately, it's really pillars. So if it's the heritage-led innovation, it's either really social, either really technical. So the combination of the PESTEL categories is also something that we hope to see evolve in the future. So we were saying there is also a lot of social innovation. So what are we talking about? So when looking in the most accepted types of innovation, so we talk commodities, which are really tangible things. We have configurations like business models or the way that you run your business or how you develop a business network. And then you have experiences, which are more customer oriented or end user oriented. So how you brand specific innovation project or what channels you use. Basically, when looking into that, we saw that a lot of the heritage-led innovations are about stakeholder engagement, a lot of intangible services, a lot of branding is going on. So we do hope that, yeah, okay, I have this little thing appearing in front of my screen, so I cannot see my own presentation. But we hope that in the future we will see also more business models appearing that are based on heritage or more material products, because these are still very low. Then finally, so I'm getting to the end. Also in terms of timing, I've been trying to speak as fast as I can, or at least go through some very difficult concepts in a very fast way. Here you see a little bit. So again, if you remember the first slide about our working definition, one of the core things is that when you say it's an innovation, it should bring an improvement to the current conditions. So it should create value with whatever you're doing. It was definitely good to see that all of them, of course, there was value, otherwise they don't fit our definition. Interesting to see is that the value that they brought was mainly for the heritage sector. So any innovation project that we saw was always doing something good for local heritage assets or intangible heritage traditions, whatnot. It was a bit, let's say, less interesting for us to see that only very few of them were also bringing added value to other sectors. So kind of generating also mainly on a very local scale some added value. What sectors were important there, or where is heritage naturally linked to? It's mainly education and tourism. So this is for us definitely something we need to focus on in the future, to show people that if you combine heritage and innovation, it can bring added value, not just for us in the heritage sector, but it can really go beyond. Then on the graph on the right-hand side, we were also looking into what is the actual spillover potential of heritage. So not just in terms of it creates an added value, but it can also create spillover, so post-project or after-project impacts. Again, a lot of it is mainly related to the heritage sector or very similar heritage assets, but then in a different location, so not where the original project or innovation took place. But there is also, still very little, but there is definitely spillover potential to other sectors. And I hope that together in our network and everyone who's listening here today, we really have to move into that. So what are we talking there? Other sectors are definitely, obviously, the real estate and construction sector, but there is a huge potential to link up with gaming sectors. Heritage also has shown to prove spillover for biodiversity in many wonderful ways. And there's even registered cases of heritage-led innovations that had spillover effects to the medicine sector, so the health sector. So this was kind of the final slide that I wanted to show to you today. Interesting for you to know, so this is all part of our innovation handbook that we are launching during the ILUCIDARE summer school in Krakow. What you will find in the handbook are a lot of case studies on everything that we have been saying here about spillover effects, about different categories or types of innovations. So you'll find everything in there with a lot of useful information. We also have been working hard to create a roadmap for innovation for people out there who have crazy ideas around heritage and want to start implementing it. So we will definitely be reaching out to all of you in the future to say, this is what's out there, and just start being innovators yourself. That's about it. I had one final slide, but Joanna again gave a wonderful recap. So we are not just doing research, We are doing a lot of activities in the project. So again, please, you can check out on our website or social media what we are doing. And yeah, we're just happy to be here today. And I look definitely forward to the conversation that we're about to have with the wonderful people in our panel. So thank you very much. And Joanna, I give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Aziliz, for this great presentation. I think it's brought a lot of questions in our minds as well. And well, first of all, I can't wait to see the handbook finalized, because even judging by the pictures you have there, it's going to be very easy and informative and attractive to look at. But I think glancing at the chat that we are having here, there's one question that comes to mind, and maybe you could refer to it. How do you think project leaders can actually know that they are bringing improvement? They are introducing a new solution, but how they know that that's improvement?
Yeah, that's a very good question, actually. Okay, yeah, I cannot see the chat, so it's great that you're telling me the questions. So how can you know this? Again, I gladly refer to the roadmap that we've been developing with wonderful innovators in Europe. So again, we could not have done this ourselves. It's really teamwork with professionals as well. How can you do it? We recommend that from the very start that you start, even before you start investing in your project. It's always good to do smaller pilot projects to see if what you have planned is working. And we recommend that at this moment that you do smaller pilot projects. As a leader, you already start looking into making what we call a zero measurement. So start looking into what are things that I think or want to improve with the thing that I'm doing. Try to find indicators of how you can measure this in the future. Try it out during your pilot project. Then when you start doing the actual investments and run your projects, it's good to think about doing it every, let's say, 6 months, trying to see if there has been any change. So this is so important, not just for the project and local value improvement, but also if you're talking or thinking about increasing your network, finding people who are willing to fund or collaborate with you. It's always good to be able to show this. So zero measurements, and think about it even before you do your investments.
Yes, definitely. I think it's to have some sort of a benchmark indicators, benchmark data. It's very important in any project, and I think that in cultural field we still lack these. I mean, to evaluate any impact, you have to know what was the situation beforehand, right? So thank you for this explanation, and I think it gives us a good structure for our discussion now with our panelists, and I have. Well, quite a great group of people here from different parts of, well, mostly Central Europe, it appears. So let me introduce them in alphabetical order. First, I would like to introduce Charlotte Biszewski. She is a manager and board member of TIPA, which is a center dedicated to the preservation of letterpress print and paper making, located in Estonian Tartu. She is representing, and I'm very happy to have her here, she's representing our last year winner of the ILUCIDARE Special Prize, as Aziliz also mentioned. Outside of the center, she works as an artist and a researcher in printmaking and historical print, and actually she's completing her PhD in digital and experimental print, which sounds quite exciting to me, not being an artist myself. Then I have with me Barbara Fogarasi, an architect, conservator of monuments by training and also by experience. However, her experience goes way beyond architecture and conservation, and especially with the project which was called Revealing the Socio-Economic Potential of Cultural Heritage, where she coordinated the community participation activities of establishing rehabilitation of, where she coordinated the rehabilitation of a community, of the parish house into a community building in Nivegi Valley. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And last but not least, I have another note on her, which is quite important because I think she will draw on that experience as well in her interventions. She is doing a PhD in environmental psychology in Eötvös Loránd University in Hungary. And finally, we have another architect and a conservator, actually Pavol Ižvolt, whom I would like to welcome very much here, has a PhD in the field of architecture. He's been professionally related to the Monuments Board of the Slovak Republic for quite some time now, and last couple of years he has been coordinator of the Pro Monumenta project on preventive maintenance of historic buildings. And he is a coordinator of various projects and also author of publications. Welcome everybody, and I'm very glad that you decided to join us here. I hope we'll have a very interesting conversation right now. And let me start with referring directly to the topic of our session. In your opinion, are heritage and innovation allies or more adversaries? Is heritage-led innovation an oxymoron? Obviously, the answer is both, but how do you understand the relations between those two? And maybe I will start with Charlotte. Would you like to share your opinion on that with us, please?
Yeah, sure. You can all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess I had never really considered these ideas of heritage and innovation going together until very, very recently. I think there's a danger of being too literal with it. So, where you think of innovation to do with purely technology and heritage purely to do with history. So it's something that's come more and more into, well, both what I do at paper and also in my own work. So I think one thing that came to light is this importance of heritage in moving forward with the world and learning lessons from the past that we can bring forward with us. Because I think one of the things that humans do quite easily is to make the same mistakes again and again and again. So one of my favorite quotes from, well, actually, she's a printmaker and artist, from Caroline Kiro, who is a graphic artist. She questions, can the old, out-of-date print technologies today come to represent something more than just functional and have qualities which kind of move past nostalgia and can also bring something new. So they can also be critical and productive of new alternative futures. So this is something that I think of a lot in the work that we do at Typer, and I think it's really relevant for this print heritage that we deal with, and also wider questions of heritage. So for example, when we're looking at making new products, new technologies, new forms of mass production, there is lessons we can take from industrial heritage, for example, things surrounding environmental impacts, like waste management, everything like that, which we can learn from our mistakes from before. With the internet and forms of communication, and we have things like false news, propaganda, everything like that, freedom of speech. We can look at like the history of books and communication in the printed word to teach, because it's all been there before. We can look at these forms of heritage to teach us new lessons. So obviously I'm giving examples really relevant to what we do at Typer, which is industrial heritage. But I do believe that this spreads kind of wider across the board. So then following on from this, what I think is kind of even more critical for museums and heritage centres is to find innovative ways and new approaches to heritage. So how do we engage with them? How do we find deeper meaning? And how do we kind of get audiences to connect with them in this way? I think it's kind of critical for museums and these heritage sites to become more involved in the design and engaging of the future, much like we've been talking about in this session. And yeah, I guess that's my input on it.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, you touch on various subjects that I would like to ask you more in the second questions as well. Let's give the floor now to Barbara Fogarasi, and then we'll come back for more info on also on printing, printing and issues around it. Barbara, what's your opinion on the relation between heritage and innovation? Allies, adversaries, can they learn from each other?
Thank you for the question. I think it's very exciting to approach it from this way. And can you hear? You can hear me, right? I just hear echo.
Yes.
But okay, so first, I think it's important to really find what we mean by heritage, because me as a conservation architect, I immediately think of built heritage. So that is historic buildings and sites, and less about other types of heritage, like, for example, what Charlotte was talking about. And what innovation is, it was very nice to hear Aziliz, how the ILUCIDARE project defined it. I think it also depends on the social, political, and cultural context, what innovation can mean. And well, for when I think of heritage and innovation, I would interpret it as some unusual approach, different from the usual practice that requires kind of thinking out of the box. And I think in this sense, of course, that can be both. It's becoming a bit of a commonplace, but I think it all depends on how we approach and implement a given built heritage-related project. So they can be allies insofar as they sort of mutually respect each other. So the activities related to innovation could not harm or compromise the values associated with the historic building or site, neither the historic, scientific, or artistic values identified by the professionals, nor the kind of social, spiritual values related to use and the local communities. So at the same time, I think heritage places should kind of open up and welcome innovation, kind of brave enough to embrace change and believe in a beneficial outcome. Many times, this is the only way for survival for a particular historic building. Another issue, I think, is during this kind of alliance, we have to be ready to accept kind of minor losses. So this is part of this kind of compromise that, of course, losses that do not violate the values mentioned earlier might bring some change that was kind of unexpected. It is at the same time, we have to be ready to modify some aspects of innovation or shape it to be acceptable for the heritage site. So this way we can really end up with a win-win situation. On the other hand, they can end up being enemies, of course, if for instance, the historic layers are destroyed for the sake of making room for innovation, or if the regulatory framework is so tight and inflexible that it is impossible to implement innovation. The problem is that in these cases, heritage will not usually end up winning, but in fact, they will both lose. So this may be a last point that a common mistake strengthens the idea heritage and innovation are adversaries, is when a particular innovation does not fit the specific heritage. But we have to realize that not all ideas and functions are appropriate for all historic buildings or sites. And those managing the project have to be really able to analyze and evaluate whether the given heritage and the given innovation are compatible. And if not, they have to be kind of brave enough to say that, no, we cannot force this kind of innovation here. It is important to find the right fit between heritage and innovation, and then they can become allies.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really like this quote that our moderator put on the chat, that respect between heritage and innovation is a must. And I think it's a very well put summary of what you just said. And I'm sure Pavol would agree with you, but maybe you have other aspects that you would like to mention to us, Pavol. What do you think about the relations between heritage and innovation?
Yeah, I think ultimately these two are partners. it's not an oxymoron, and I am persuaded that this connection has been already introduced into the modern conservation language of the 21st century. For the links between those two, the old model when heritage just consumes the public sources every year again and again has been expired. We need to prove that the heritage is itself a vivid source for the society. Nowadays, we are endangered by potential economic degrees, environmental disasters, social restlessness. And the politicians, definitely, they will try to cut cultural budget as the first one. It's happening now, also in Slovakia, after the pandemic, for example. There is a risk that the cultural heritage will not be any more attractive for people. It can be considered as a public inherited and somehow unwanted burden. So we have to persuade politicians that it has its economic potential, cultural potential, and many others, of course. What I found important is to change the old-fashioned optics as the start and start to be initiative and be creative, but still try to keep the high level of professionalism. I mean, we are still conservationists, but we can also cooperate with professionals from other fields. And when we will stay also flexible for changes, the new effects will arise. When you connect different subjects, for example, different social groups, or for example, with historic buildings, the new use completely change the old function of the building and transform for something else, etc. Then these partners can combine in working in the same team with some new goal and might influence each other in a positive way. It reminds me, for example, the situation from the other field of the modern society, like industry, environment, education, and marketing, for example. So you can also combine all these things in some new started up project, and it can have a benefits, added values, and it can be sustainable at least for several years, not forever, of course.
Yeah, I can't say I'm not worried about the budget for culture, as you said. The cuts in the budget probably will be there, and the pandemic had detrimental effect on, well, on the financial situations, definitely. But I like you're saying that heritage must be seen as a resource for society, and we definitely agree with that. And I think that the project that you have done a couple of years ago, that you did a couple of years ago, let me quote: "Strategic heritage conservation practices, inclusion of the unemployed in saving cultural heritage in Slovakia as an innovative joint project of the Slovak Republic Ministry of Culture and Labor and Social Affairs and Family." And I think it shows the innovative approach, the social value, and also this interdisciplinarity that you mentioned, which is well, indispensable when we want to actually use and not abuse culture here. And I would like to ask you now: do you think that? Well, in what way was that project really innovative? What new values did it bring? How did they improve situation? And do you have any idea, is there any follow-up to it as well?
Thank you. It was the first project of this kind, so the first innovative project in the field of cultural heritage in Slovakia, as far I know. And it was a quite complicated situation at the beginning, that we had about we have about 300 identified castles in Slovakia in different state of preservation. And 100 of them are protected as national cultural monuments. And they are in a different state of preservation. For example, some of them are open for the public and working as museums, but there are many small castles just in the state of ruin, in the forest, with no one responsible for their state of conservation, and there are different owners, and so and so. But there was one positive one positive factor, that we have more than 30 active NGOs who works with voluntarists, and these people, they used to conserve these castle ruins during the summer, during the weekends, and so. But they had the limited capacity. So at the time I've been working at the Ministry of Culture, so I was thinking and what to do with that, and we had a strong support at that time of the minister. So we try to connect different sources and different attitudes. So we combined the Ministry of Culture, which gave the financial source for support for materials and professionals and so. And then the Ministry of Social Affairs and Family, and they allowed us to use money from the European Social Fund for unemployed people. And the third important stone was where the NGOs with voluntarists. So the leaders of the NGOs became the leaders of the group of unemployed people, and we started with a pilot project in 2011 with 2 castles, and then in 2012 there were already about 30 or 40 castles, and the project continues up till now. So every year there is a amount of, let's say, 40 monuments being repaired, and about 700 unemployed people working on it. And the costs are about 2 million euros per year. And the benefits are incredible. Because before the voluntaries were working only during the weekends, but now there is ongoing work since Monday till Saturday, let's say, or the 3 quarters of year, depending on the weather, of course. And the work is very sensitive towards the heritage. So we keep much more of the authenticity of the castle. We use labor, like a human labor, human force, the old traditional way of building, and using the lime plaster and human timber, and etc., etc. And the project is also very sensitive towards the archaeology, because it's flexible, so we can change the different parts of the castle when it's needed for the work, and we do the archaeology always before, etc., etc. But the main results are very various. For example, the unemployed people, they receive the qualification, the new qualification, and they can start to work on the market later on. They receive some the basic working habits, like to wake up in the morning and to climb a few kilometers to the site, which is usually in very distant, remote areas. And the monuments which are already more or less repaired, they are now they are now open for the tourists, so there is the increase of tourism. And what's very interesting, the whole number of people interested in castle increased dramatically. So now there are on the website, there are different websites of different castles on Facebook, for example, and these groups, they involve thousands of people who are like fans, became fans of these castles. So if you ask for the follow-up of the project, it's interesting because now the new government, they didn't prolong for the first year the project, but there was such a strong reaction of all these people on internet and media and so many articles in newspapers that the new Minister of Culture, she had to find some money and to continue with this project. So this project survived already through the several different governments.
That's definitely impressive with surviving the governments with the changing political situation, obviously. But I think this project is a perfect example of the way heritage can be used as a positive tool for improvement on the labor market, in the human capital as well. And you could hear also about the side effects that I've seen on the chat. There were some questions about the side effects. Here we have side effects that are, well, could be judged positive, I think. So thank you for this great example. And I think the social aspect of innovation was also part of what was happening in Hungary, in the Nivegi Valley, right, Barbara? It was a basis for your project. How was that innovative, you think?
Yes, definitely. The social part was very important for us. Just about the project in a few words. It was financed by the Norwegian grant and the Hungarian state, and it was meant to be kind of a model project to showcase how to implement the historic building restoration with community involvement in a way that the building would benefit long-term care and sustainability. We were given an abandoned, ruined, Baroque parish house, which would be turned into a community center according to the needs of the local community. And the idea was to embed the restoration project in a wider regional development, targeting local entrepreneurs, local producers, winemakers, and cheesemakers, and other food, accommodation, and service providers who struggled with scaling up their businesses. We are really in a rural context, which is also part of innovation. So the project involved not only heritage and construction experts, but several other fields of expertise like community development experts, specialists in marketing, business law, financial advisors, and so on for the local people. And the idea was that it was benefiting from the business development process, would have the opportunity to kind of advertise their products, goods, and services in the restored community center. And in return, they would contribute to the upkeep of the historic building. This was the original business model idea, which was, of course, not fully realized due to some emerging issues. But in any case, I think the approach itself was innovative. And the fact that we involved several professions was also kind of new. It was not just interdisciplinary. It's not about different specialists working together. It was actually, I would say, transdisciplinary, meaning that they start adopting each other's knowledge. So the specialists from various fields like architecture, community development, heritage protection, and psychology even, which I'll speak about later, they were brought on board early on, working together and forming a common vocabulary. And the final product would not have happened without each other, without any of these people. And all of this happened, of course, in the field, in village context, in a real-life project, with real people, with their participation. So it was actually very complex, forming new bonds, not only among the experts, but within the community. And I would like to elaborate a bit on the thread of innovation that is the involvement of environmental psychology. So we are really curious to know how the kind of perceptions, feelings, meanings, attitudes associated with the historic building in particular, and with the village in general, changed in local people due to the intervention. So these changes were measured. We did benchmark measurement with psychometric surveys, qualitative tools such as mental mapping, where they have to draw their image of the village or even the entire Nived Valley. And it is interesting to see what appears on the map, what objects, what places are important objectively to people. And we did this measurement also later on. There was also a so-called place metric tool that measures which spots in the village are important or dear to people. For example, there were questions like, where would you bring a visitor? What would you show them in the village? And it's interesting to see what people mark on the map. So environmental psychology is really kind of an excellent approach to identify certain underlying phenomena and processes that are not always visible at first in a given context, and which are usually not dealt with. It always looks at kind of the interaction between people and the environment and supposes a transactional relationship between them, so they really impact each other. And the fact that the process was not a full success produced, of course, several lessons to be learned. And I think this is also part of innovation, that there are lessons. We do not accomplish everything we wanted, but we cannot call it a failure because there are many lessons, especially about such complex social situation, that even such complex set of experts is not enough to deal with it. There were social conflicts which were not fully exposed and handled, but this is good to know for our next project. So since there was no really precedent in our case or a good practice example that we could have used, we kind of relied on our intuition, of course our expertise, but mostly intuition to manage the process. And one interesting thing I really want to highlight here is that the role of the heritage expert is crucial, of course, when you deal with a historic building. And in our case, out of all the participants, they were the most reluctant to really participate in the process. They were very tough, and we couldn't really find a common platform with them, even though I myself am a conservation architect, and we are supposed to speak the same language. But they really believed in their professional competence, and that was kind of enough for them. But in this case, this competence can really turn into kind of professional arrogance and produce a huge gap between the experts and the lay people, where the lay people are kind of thought to have, just some foolish and absurd ideas about the historic context. And there's no real dialogue. And this is what was kind of unfortunate, because this is exactly what we need. We need kind of this evidence-based professional dialogue, I think. It's not only out of goodwill or intuition, to remove it from the level of heated emotions and make it a professional dialogue. I think that's what's important and innovative, really.
Yes, thank you. I think when talking about the mechanisms that support developing new solutions, new innovative ways to deal with problems, such evidence-based dialogue, professional dialogue is extremely needed. And I think there is a reluctance on both sides of the society or local communities, some sort of mistrust, and the experts who definitely have knowledge and expertise and know how to do projects, but sometimes they might not know what actually people need there and the social aspect of it. And I think it's what you found out in your project could be quite common in many other cases. And bridging that gap would be one of the ways to support innovative solutions, definitely in local communities. So thank you for that note. And back to you, Charlotte. I would like to ask you now about the TIPA Museum and its innovativeness, but I cannot help myself, and I will quote something that the jury members wrote on your project. The Estonian Print and Paper Museum is a brilliant example of heritage-led innovation in many ways. From its unique, multifunctional and interdisciplinary model to the novel methods used to recover traditional printing techniques, as well as original ways of engaging local communities and creating value for visitors. In a digital era, TIPA contributes to the safeguard, recovery and reuse of printing techniques and know-how which belong to our common history and shared European heritage. And I think that's a very well put a summary of what you do there, but we would like to learn a little bit more, and we would like to ask you also whether when you started creating the TIPA Center, the TIPA Museum, did you think it was something innovative? Was it a conscious decision to make something innovative? Or how did it go actually? And why do you think it's innovative, if it still is, in your opinion?
Okay, well, to be honest, I wasn't there when it was actually being founded. This was 10 years ago. We had 3 founders, one woman who founded the paper museum, and 2 of my colleagues who founded the print site, and they happened to be in the same building, and the whole thing came together. But it actually kind of was born out of cultural communities rescuing these old print equipment and printing presses and the equipment and tools. Because what happened, and this happened all over the world, was that you had these old printing presses that were used for hundreds and hundreds of years. A lot of the history of print and the way of working with print and the techniques, they did not change at all. There were small changes, there were small bits of technological advances, but the whole thing about letterpress print was it was very much the kind of main core of its process was the same. And then what happened in the 20th century was obviously with computers, the internet, and digital printing, it changed very, very quickly. So a lot of companies had to either close or really, really update what they did. And it left a lot of these old printing presses with nowhere to go. They became redundant. And a lot of these machines are, well, they're not only beautiful, and they're really built to last, if you've ever worked on a printing press, but they're also extremely heavy, made out of cast iron or steel or whatever. And there's a big issue of what to do with them. So a lot of them ended up, unfortunately, getting scrapped and sent to the scrap heap. So that's where kind of it came about. Or it was the Estonian Paper and Print Museum was its previous name. Was this need, basically meeting a need when it started. It was meeting a need to save these items and save all the items that went with it, all the metal type and wooden type and cases and things like guillotines, paper cutting machines, everything. And alongside this, it became apparent that also there was a need to save not only this equipment, but also the skills. So people who worked in the print industry and also as paper makers or any of these kinds of industries, they were really interesting because they were working in between industry and craft. So you would study for, at least I know in the UK where I'm originally from, you would study for at least 7 years as an apprentice before you could be a printer. And it's the same all over Europe. So it became apparent that not only these machines needed to be saved, but also these skills. The skills and knowledge is really at risk of being lost. And with the print industry, it was very good at printing and documenting all kinds of discoveries and historical moments, but it didn't quite document as well or preserve printing about itself. So that's where it was born. It was born out of a need. And it also became apparent that, well, these machines, they don't last very well if they're left in the dust and they're left to just on an exhibit. If they're not moving, if they're not kept in action, then they slowly deteriorate, like all kinds of machines or engines, anything like that. So that's why it became also apparent that we needed to kind of put these into action alongside these skills and preserve all this tangible knowledge. And I think the thing that makes it really interesting is we are this multidisciplinary center where we do have things like artists coming in, we have students, we teach workshops, and then visitors who come to visit the museum, they get they get a one-on-one tour, and they get to make by hand and experience printing by hand, and they get to see the machines actually moving and in action, and it gives them more of an experience and an understanding about the whole process. So I think that's what it is this innovative way of fully embracing somewhere, fully embracing being somewhere between a historical archive and a working studio, working center, which makes it really innovative.
Yeah, thank you very. Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, that was it.
No, I just wanted to say that you mentioned something that for our audience probably, and for us here, it's quite obvious, the intangible heritage. But for many people, it could be something that they don't think immediately when it doesn't come to mind when they think of heritage. And this is skills and knowledge, which is intangible heritage that is quite ephemeral and could be easily lost if not for such centers as yours. And I think there is a great deal of potential to adapt your ideas in other places, I think. I mean, of course, I'm aware that people are safeguarding their intangible heritage and also the crafts and so on, but I think your example is quite useful to look at and to think about implementing such an innovation. When you think about an innovation being place-based, meaning that when you implement something that is new in your area, it's still innovation. Doesn't matter that they do it in the US or in Asia or wherever for years now. For us, it's still innovation. So, I mean, adapting such solutions could be a good idea. Thank you very much for that. And I would like to ask maybe Barbara, what do you think? Because you said that you had there were some maybe not difficult but challenging situations in your project. What do you think are the most difficult challenge, pressure, problem when you try to do innovative things in heritage? You mentioned already some, but maybe you would like to add a little bit more to that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I would answer it on two levels. I think the challenges are really on two levels. One it has to do with resources, and it was mentioned from Pavol as well, that innovation takes time, human capacity, and at least an initial investment. And these resources are usually limited. I think that's a challenge. The other one is a bit of what I was talking about. It's on the level of mentality. Do we really want innovation for heritage? It's often a basic question. Does the social and political context allow for it? How do we approach heritage and historic buildings? I think in any case, having discussions about it is a good start. Like debates such as this one are most welcome because they really can trigger this kind of so much needed dialogue that I was talking about. So I think asking good questions is part of innovation and bringing in all the stakeholders that are interested. So for me, these two.
Yeah, thank you. That is a very, very good point. And also to think whether we actually want innovation in heritage as a heritage sector. Do we really need it? I mean, because from what you have been telling us, there is, and what we have seen in other projects as well, there is this gap between the heritage specialists and the general public sometimes. So maybe there are people who don't think that there is innovation needed in heritage. Yes, thank you. And Charlotte, what do you think would be the biggest problem or challenge when trying to do something new?
Well, I mean, aside from money and time and COVID, I guess, yeah, Barbara also brought up big debates as do we need innovation in heritage? So for us, there's a lot of talk in museums about changing the way you do tours or engage with visitors by using certain technologies, or doing mostly online or videos. And this is something that we're trying to, we do to a certain extent, but we try to also make sure that ours is very much about face-to-face and one-on-one and this hands-on approach, which is very difficult when working with innovation and the way the world's going at the moment. And then secondly, for us, it's been about proving what we do. So we're kind of defined as a working museum, and this is not something that's so clear. So with this, there are issues when you come to look at like how do you preserve your collection and use it. And these things haven't necessarily been documented right now or defined. So often we're finding our own way through. And along with this, with proving it, it's also making this way of working recognized to an outside audience, to maybe funders or people who want to also get involved and support local, local governments or anything like that. It's when because we're doing a lot of different things, it's hard to prove that we're like relevant.
Yeah, definitely, and I think that Pavol has mentioned something similar, that proving your the importance of what you do, it's quite a challenge. And fortunately, with the project he was describing, it happened in Slovakia, and there was this local community and people who backed up the project. So they were successful in making the public at least aware of the importance of the project, and luckily also the politicians saw the benefits. So definitely that, and I also think that the digital sphere could be a challenge, because we normally associate firstly innovation with digital technologies, right? That's the most common association, I would say. And in the pandemic times, we are mostly fed up with that digital world. A lot of us. I mean, how long can we stay in front of the computer? How long can we pay really attention? So there could be a question whether we need to digitalize so much, whether we really need to put heritage online so much. And I think that the balance between not overdoing it in a way. I mean, in terms of people who would actually use it in the end, because you can have in a museum you can have certain things digitalized, but it's never the same as if you go to a museum and experience it yourself. And especially in a center like yours, I think that visiting it online gives you an overall idea what's going on, but it's the feeling that you get when you are there and you are experiencing in real life and you actively engage is something that is most important, I think. Pavol, I think I stole your line about the challenges because the resources. But I would like to ask you about your opinion in general. What do you think? It's a challenge. I mean, maybe in the way that people who are recipients of the innovation. Maybe on their side there is also some sort of a problem. I don't know what you experienced, especially how you actually convinced people, the unemployed, that working and learning something new about conservation would be a good idea. Was that a challenge?
Now we are going more into the details, and I have to say that it was different for the different parts of the country. So there are some distant regions with a high level of unemployment rate, where it was easier because it was a job for them. But there are parts, mostly in the west, with a low unemployment rate, and there it was more difficult to find good staff, good people. You can work with them, responsible people. But after a few seasons, the basic teams were established, and the people like to work together. They enjoy the company. They have seen the results, obvious results, and it was also a reason for them to be for some certain pride in the community. The like a patriotism, or at least in the local community, they were really proud of their results. So the people generally, they like to work on the castle. So when I generalize, I can say that some changes in the social perception of monuments and sites about these projects were already made. And what you can do, you can always show the positive examples and might encourage the adoption of similar projects which have the ability to infuse new life into our generally conservative discipline of monument conservation. We have already mentioned here the international collaboration. So the good ideas, I think, should be spread and adapt in a different condition. Nowadays, I work on the project of preventive maintenance, the model of Dutch Monumentenwacht, which was born in the 70s, but it still have the potential. And our project, the new project in 2014, was being copied in Lithuania, and the Norway has been inspired and wants to build up a similar project as well, for example. So I think you can always show these good examples from different countries, and when the politicians and the public, when they see first results, it's easy to persuade them. Sometimes seems more difficult to keep this project going for a longer period. As I mentioned already, the troubles with the different political representations. After the election in Slovakia, but I think it's perhaps similar in other countries of Central Europe. The new governments, they usually came and they dislike everything what was before, and they said that it was corrupted or not working and whatever. So you should stress also on the publicity, and you have to prove that this is for a public good, and this project have to continue.
Yes, thank you. I have to totally agree with you, and I think that also innovation is about improving, right? So if you actually see the improvement, maybe that's the way, and if you publicize it in a proper way, then there is a chance for people to actually not only be aware but appreciate it as well. And I think there are different challenges when you are a startup, I mean, when you're starting up an innovative solution, and a different ones when you are already an established endeavor, in established project. You have different problems when you want to maintain it. And I think, thank you very much for all those interventions here. And I think we have mentioned a couple of fields where innovation, heritage innovation can occur. But I would like to go back now to our scientific coordinator and ask Aziliz about her comments on what we have heard, and also whether she could give us some more insight on the fields of innovation, heritage-led innovation that was perhaps not mentioned, so that in the end we all, we leave this room, let's say virtual room, knowing that innovation has various faces, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Joanna, but also thank you much to the speakers here that we have heard. I think all three of them are really examples of what we in ILUCIDARE mean with heritage-led innovation. That's also one of the reasons that all of them are actually showcased in the handbook, again, that will be published next month. We're very happy to have them in the book. Also in the roadmap, so again, for people who are getting inspired by what they hear and actually want to set up a project. Now, getting back to what I heard a lot, it was a lot, even though I know the cases very well, I also heard some very interesting new quotes, like Barbara mentioned, the idea of mutual respect. I think that's something that we should also still definitely incorporate. It's good to think about heritage and innovation to survive, but indeed there should be mutual respect. Something that I also heard throughout the discussion was about not just this discussion. I have the feeling that today, if you enter any discussion about heritage, we will always touch upon the topic of resources and money, finances. It is important. I would like to stress here that also how we developed the handbook and all the cases that are in there, be it technological or whatnot, I want to stress they are not, definitely not, all dependent on, let's say, what are typical funding resources or what somehow in our minds in the heritage sector we still conceive as we can only work if we have funding from public governments or what. There is a lot of very interesting examples. Like the one from Pavol is definitely one. Why not look beyond our sector, look into employment or biodiversity? There are so many things where heritage can link up to. So that's definitely one solution. We also saw a lot of interesting projects that started through crowdsourcing, Kickstarter even, to name something. I think we're also still too afraid to actually, for instance, look for business sponsors or set up small trade collaborations, like was the case in the Biszewski Valley that Barbara presented. So these are things that I definitely wanted to stress. Then another point that I heard that I just wanted to briefly get back on is, I agree, everyone is tired of being online all the time and having digital, but I would like to stress, so I'm not sure who mentioned it, but digital, let's say, applications or everything to do to get heritage out there to the public. I think we really have to make the distinction in terms of, is it meant for just outreach? Because then, okay, it can get a lot. We will never replace, of course, the feeling of visiting a building or seeing an object in a museum. But there is so many things that we can do for education, for better management, better working, better preserving heritage, that I do think a lot of digital technology innovations have happened and are still to come. I mean, it's for the benefit of heritage in the end. Then the question that Joanna asked, I think it's definitely relevant. What we heard were already very interesting examples. We have cultural creative industries from TIPA. There is definitely economic social innovations in the one presented by Pavol and Barbara. But we are missing some things here, as we showed in the graph already, when it comes to the so-called pestle. Things where heritage, again, should be boosted in thinking about innovations that have a link with the environment, like literally the environment. There are some very nice examples in the handbook. For instance, in Ireland, this is one that is featured. It's really one of my favorites. They started restoring old farm buildings, not with money from the heritage sector, so it's quite similar to what Pavol was doing, but basically they did it with money from, let's say, the agriculture and environmental department. I lost the exact name at this moment. And why they did it is because the roof thatched of the thatched roofs of the farm buildings in Ireland, they are a natural habitat for bats. So bats, like the actual animals, and they were getting extinct in a specific region in Ireland. So that's why I decided, by restoring these traditional heritage farm buildings, we're gonna save the population of the animals. So that's like already a more environmental example. We also have some really cool, let's say, more business model examples in there. For instance, there is the model called Adopt a Monument, which comes from oh my God, Scandinavian country. I'm pretty sure it's Finland. Again, it's in the handbook. I've been working on it for too long, I guess. Where again, they found a very interesting model where private owners could adopt a monument, and then through the whole series they would get, let's say, a money return and still do good for the heritage. So again, double improvement. What else is out there? There is just a lot, and yeah, I really some time for questions. But again, I'm just happy to have this conversation here today. I liked Pavol said it. I guess innovation is embedded in our discourse in the 21st century when we talk about heritage, but now it's time to act on it. Let's all together start just really also doing it. We from research, of course, we do what we can, but let's just really do it, move into it, and keep the idea of mutual respect, of course, at all times. So thank you.
Thank you, Aziliz, for those comments. I would like to ask now Jan Strycharz to join us here for a moment, because he was busy in the chat, and I think he found some questions for our panelists there. So if you could please join us here and share with us the questions that were, and whatever was happening in the chat, please.
Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for a lively discussion. It was a huge pleasure to hearing all of you explaining what innovation and heritage is all about. And we've been also discussing some things on the chat. And I guess there's not much time for many questions, but one of the interesting things that was touched upon in the chat is the motivation of the person behind the innovation project. So a little bit more personal question. I guess innovation is not easy. So what our audience is interested in, how to find motivation for getting innovation on its feet, leading through all the troubles, and just staying motivated to push it through, to make it happen and to implement it. So I guess it will be very interesting to hear your take as leaders in heritage. How you go about it?
Any volunteers? Barbara, Charlotte, Pavol? Anyone would like to share how you actually make through? What keeps you going? How you actually deal with when you have all those difficult challenges ahead? What makes you think it's all worth it?
Well, if I can say, with all the challenges, you always have some small successes, and some, especially when you're working with people, with a community, you always see some small results, some happy faces. You see the building changing. I mean, of course, we're interested in historic buildings as an architect and conservation architect, so we see the results there. So I think it's always a balance, and in the end, you hope that the benefits will be greater than the challenges, and that keeps you going.
I saw that Charlotte wanted to say something as well.
Yeah, I was on mute. I guess you kind of become propelled into one direction. I think anyone who works in probably any of these fields has a slight obsessive nature and has a driving force behind them which they can't quite explain, because the other option is, I don't know, and you're on your path and you have to continue with it or face the consequences. This is sometimes how I feel. But no, there's no question of motivation. It's just a must.
Okay, Pavol, would you like to say something, or let's move to another question? Sure.
No, it's just very quickly that. Can I, or I don't know?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, because I hear some voice there. for me, the best feeling, what keep me going on, it's when the results are obvious. You know, it's like the Aziliz already mentioned the digital era when we are all behind the computers, and there is also in all profession I see there is a lot of administrative stuff, and you have sometimes feeling that you are just putting things from one side to another side, and it's more and more paper. But when you are on the side, it's like when you plant a garden, that you work with the line and mortar, and you see the result, which is obvious. And this is a fantastic feeling, and it's forcing.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Seeing the direct effect of your work is really something that well, allows you to continue even with the bureaucracy, I think.
Yeah.
Aziliz, you wanted to add?
Joanna, can I? Yeah,
Sure.
thank you. Yeah, so what I hear is definitely the main point. Like you see smiling faces, you see things happening before you. Maybe I speak from a less, for now, practical point of view. But whenever we're really working on making this handbook together with Jimena, we're just sometimes it's too much. But we keep going because in the end, I think we keep saying, wow, if this thing is going to be done, like we're just going to be really proud that, you know, we were there, we did the thing. There is a certain pride also in what you do. Definitely also you need to be enthusiastic about the topic. Like every day is going to be like, oh my God, this is so crazy. I love to do it. So that's definitely there. And yeah, I mean, even for me as an academic, let's say, just thinking about these things, doing these things really opened my mind. Like Suna, also entering a startup company. It is about digitalization of heritage, so don't shoot me. But I mean, yeah, it's really, yeah, it makes you grow as a person. Just I think we need to start talking and thinking innovation, and then everything will just happen. I think it's.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And Jan, is there anything else our audience would like to know?
Yeah, there's another question about actually going through some troubles. One of the participants noticed that many of those innovative projects start or have to do something with a clash of expectations between different actors involved. And you also, as panelists, you mentioned the need for discussions or debates, but maybe you had some more insights into how to deal with those conflicts that happen on the way.
Yeah. Anyone dealt with a conflict that would that has some good advice how to do it? I guess dialogue, right? Yeah, you, Barbara, mentioned dialogue. That was important, right?
In our case, there were a lot of conflicts between the local community and the professionals. And I think the fact that we let them talk and they could ventilate about this, it already is part of the solution. They can then, you know, they listen to, being listened to is really the first step. And then if they feel that they are part of the process, then they can accept even such results which they didn't imagine they would want. But since they came up with this solution together, then they can, you know, really feel that it's their own and they're part of it. So I think that's the key.
Yeah, I think it's a true for many, well, for any kind of project actually, that you involve people who are to be the beneficiaries, the stakeholders, and it's time consuming and could be irritating, and it takes loads of time sometimes, and it gets you frustrated. But I think that's one of the ways to have a successful project, because otherwise you end up with conflicts sometime along the way if you don't let people take part in it. Any other comment on that?
Joanna, can I make a small addition there?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So yeah, it's definitely true. Like conflict in heritage communities, it will always be there. But I would like to, something that we also devote attention on in the book is what we call the innovation resistance. And I think it kind of has to do with it. And here I'm actually going to quote Barbara in one of the sessions that we had together. Watch out for the "we have always done it this way" people. Like even though like the most innovations that we see, they really start from a problem or a need somewhere, so that it's true. But once you come with your idea, you start implementing, make it in an innovation, there will always be people who do not accept the innovation. And this is what we call the innovation resistance, or the regime in evolutionary economics. And this is something that you will always have to deal with. And then it's often not the local communities, but more local governments, or like people who have been running things for a long time. So this is also definitely something to take into account if you decide to do a roadmap and a startup. And I really hope you will all do these things. You will encounter them. So try to go for it.
So maybe last question. Jan, could you select something more? Or
Yeah.
yeah, good. One
The
last.
The last question would be a short one, but very direct. Do we always lose something with innovation? And if yes, how to deal with this loss?
Wow, that's a difficult one.
Yeah, that's true. If I'm just gonna go ahead, because the first thing that came into my mind when I heard the question is that I don't really see the question. Do we lose something? Again, I hope not. No, of course, not all innovation startups are successful. Let's be clear about that. Loss is is possible, but I do hope, or I hope it was clear, that when you have a successful innovation, it adds value on what is already there, basically. So the way that I see it, maybe I'm speaking too much from the innovation point of view, is that loss shouldn't be there. The mutual respect quote from Barbara is very important there. So no, there is no loss intended at the basis of innovation.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, go ahead, Barbara.
May I just add? But I think at the same time, you cannot avoid loss. I mean, with change, there is always something that you leave behind. Even when you move from a low quality apartment to a nice new house, you will still have kind of this feeling of loss of your old place. It's kind of a mourning process. I mean, it's the same as when you lose a person. So in any situation of change, there is a loss, and we have to, I think, allow for that. But hope that with time and seeing that it's for the better, then we can handle that loss. But I think so. I actually mentioned it in my first reflection, that we have to deal with these losses, but it's part of the process. Let's say.
Yes, Charlotte, what do you think?
So just quick, well, there's no way to answer that quickly, but one thing that is interesting with innovation is how it changes. Like, for example, I would give the example of the book, that everyone said a few years ago that the book was dead and the books were completely irrelevant to our life. But actually, they've kind of changed. They've kind of changed their meaning as an object. People still have a connection to them. And I think it's it can lose stuff, and especially being in a museum, it's very difficult to make choices about what we keep and what we throw away. We work with lead type, which is extremely heavy and unpractical and poisonous and all this stuff. So and now looking at it from a future point, you kind of look at it and you're like, okay, this doesn't really have a place in the world, and it's because of innovation. So it's changed its role, which I think is really interesting. Maybe you don't necessarily lose something, but rather its place in the world has changed with innovation.
Yes, thank you. I think it's a quite interesting way to end this set of questions. And I also noticed there was one in the chat about the nature of our project, whether we are an academic project or a project that deals with like World Heritage sites and helps them with innovative approaches. And I think, Aziliz, we can say that we are sort of both. We started with the research, and we are finishing up now, because our project will end in April next year, with the handbook, which will be a practical way to learn about innovation. We have a number of capacity buildings, a number of workshops within the project for practitioners. Anything else you would like to add, Aziliz? I think we are both.
Yeah, what you say is definitely true. So we are what they call a coordination support action. So for us, it was really about creating a community of innovation, bringing the word out there. Again, I think the more you talk and think about it, the more you're inclined to start doing innovation things, specifically with World Heritage sites. Some of our capacity buildings do take place in World Heritage sites. So we are active in Cuenca in Ecuador. And then getting back to a question that I saw earlier, what we are doing in the Balkans. So we are there we are working both on innovation and international relations. So we are doing capacity building with and in 3 countries, Kosovo, Albania, Montenegro, about the specific topic of kulas, which are, let's say, fortified vernacular buildings, which are typical for the region. So first we did training on GIS, learning how to make inventories, databases. In the next step, we're going to Montenegro to do an adaptive reuse project of one of the kulas. Again, all countries are involved. And then as the final step, we bring everything back to Kosovo, and there we will have a training session on serial World Heritage nominations. So it's really about, like, these buildings are in 3 countries, they were not collaborating. So again, bringing people together, put some innovation dust all over it and see where we get. So I think, yeah, you can say we do both, like we try to bring to the people, like being more comfortable with innovation in a way. But yeah, we also very practically do flagship projects in a way.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the clarification. Well, in the end, I would like to ask Jimena, do we have any results on the polls that we would like to share? Yeah, okay, please.
We do have results. Yeah, in the meantime, I have shared the link in the chat. Some people already respond, so we can maybe see them on the screen.
Yeah, we would like to ask.
We were asking.
Yeah, we would like to ask to share the link on the screen.
We were asking the same question again. After this very interesting discussion, we want to know if maybe there are some other words that we can associate with cultural heritage and innovation. We do have some different words. And we want to know in which fields do you think heritage-led innovation is most likely to appear after all of this. So for the second question, yeah, we can see that the social is the one that people think is most likely to appear. And then we don't have anyone for the legal. So yeah, as we were all saying, as you were saying, I think it's us to come up with new ideas from intersecting disciplines and sectors and networks, so we can have heritage-led innovations in all sectors. Economical, technological, and environmental are also represented in the pool.
Yes. Okay.
Maybe we can go with the arrow to the left to see the previous question. So we can see some of the words that people share. To the left, sorry. So the previous, and once again. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Digital.
Digital clearly, yeah, is present here. And virtual reality as well. Involving the community, teenagers, yeah, it's also important, different generations.
Yeah.
History.
Well,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jimena, for preparing for us the poll. And thank you, everybody who took the time to take part in the poll. I would like to thank our great panelists right now, Charlotte, Barbara, Pavol, Aziliz, as well as Jimena and Jan, who were moderating the chat and doing those extracurricular activities for us. Thank you for the patience, and I'm sorry we are a little bit longer than expected. And as a last word, I would like to say that the pandemic is a difficult, critical situation, but innovations are born out of critical situations. So I think that we are about to see a number of them ahead of us in the future. Well, thank you very much, and go to the ILUCIDARE website for more on our project. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.